work. So I try to encourage them to think about things that are important to them, that are always going to matter to them, so they can make a well-informed decision today that they won't necessarily regret or take them down the wrong path in the future. So that was a whole spiel, but I promise I'm done. So the activity today is from Brene Brown. For those of you that have your cameras off, I'm going to ask for a little participation. You can keep them off. Is anyone here familiar with Brene Brown? You can use like the raise hand or like reaction function. I just kind of want to get a poll of what people know.
Or feel free to use the chat as well.
Yeah, or the chat, whatever works. We're not picky here. Linda. Okay, so it looks like maybe not too familiar. So just to give you some background on her, Brene Brown is a professor, but also being a professor, you're also a researcher. So primarily she is a researcher. She's at the University of Houston in Texas. And a lot of her work revolves around really fun things like shame and guilt and different things like that. So she researches kind of uncomfortable emotions, how we process those, and really how they affect our relationship with others. That's kind of her broad net. She's written like 5 or 7 books now. And the activity from today is from her book, Dare to Lead, which is a leadership book. So you can use this in different settings. Dare to Lead is more of a professional development leadership book, so it's kind of meant for the workplace, but it can be adapted in a lot of different ways. And she also has, I think she has a Netflix special. She's got an HBO Max special. She's on everything. She's got a great podcast. So if you're not familiar, I would absolutely recommend listening to her stuff. She has really interesting guests and really interesting perspectives. So, okay, I've talked for almost 5 minutes now. Let's just get rolling. So, Karen, I don't know what to call you. If you want to share your screen and pull up the values list, so you can take a look at that with everyone. Okay, so first glance, I know it can look a little overwhelming, but the idea is that we will take this big list and slowly narrow it down to about 4 things, but I promise it will go slow. So what I'd like you to do, if you have this piece of paper in front of you, or if you need to just write one down, grab a scrap piece of paper. And what I'd like you to do is just kind of write a rough estimate of what your daily schedule is. Like what time you wake up, what time you eat breakfast, what time you get to work. What do you do at work? Do you like to warm up reading the news or drinking coffee, chatting with a coworker, lunch, things like that, meetings, what time you normally get home. I'll stop explaining. Okay, so I'll give you 1 more minute to wrap up. Okay, just a little bit longer. Go ahead, finish up your thought, whatever you're writing down, whatever you're working on. Don't be too panicked if you didn't get it all done. We're just going to be setting that to the side and transitioning over to the list of values now. So like I said, we're going to be starting kind of broad and we're working down to 4. Again, I know that sounds daunting. And I recommend approaching this with an open mind and flexibility. So I've done this exercise several times. Every time it's different. You know, there's a couple that are consistent for me, but it does change day to day. So if family doesn't make it in your top 2 today, you know, that's okay. It doesn't mean that you don't value your family. It's just kind of the day. So let yourself be a little gentle in that way. Don't necessarily feel like you have to pick something because it should be up there. So what we're going to do is start with narrowing this list down to 20 items. So what I'd like you to do is draw a square around 20 items. I'll give you like 3 minutes to do this. I'll set a timer and kind of let you know, like 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, just so you don't necessarily feel rushed. You can go ahead and get started on that. Karen, someone posted in the chat asking to print the list. You are on mute.
Thank you. There is a way to print the list. I sent it out by email earlier this morning. So in the moment, you won't be able to print it, but know that it's in your inbox. And if for some reason you didn't receive it, please let me know and I'll resend it.
And if you aren't able to print it right now, you can just write, you know, like 1, 2, 3. If you want to copy it from the screen, you don't necessarily have to print. You can make your own list. You don't have to do squares or anything. We'll make it work.
So Katie, I have a question.
Yeah.
So we're putting squares around values that resonate with us. Is that?
Yep. Yes.
Okay.
Values that resonate with you, you know, things that kind of stand out to you, things that you value, find important. And if that's kind of difficult too, you can always start with things that maybe you know aren't necessarily important. You can like cross those out, kind of narrow down the list that way.
Thank you.
You have just under 1.5 minutes left. Not to put pressure, but 30 seconds or so. Okay, so now that you have your either list of 20 values you feel are important to you or resonate with you, or your squares, your 20 squares. What I'll have you do now is from those squares, go down your list and circle 10 of them. So we're going to cut it in half. We're going to go from 20 to 10. And I recommend circling them to differentiate them. And we'll do 2 minutes or so for this one. We'll check in. Just under a minute. Okay, so go ahead, finish circling those 10. If you haven't finished that up yet, we'll move on to the next step. So we're going to take that 10 now. And from that 10, you will star 4 of the top values. So 4 stars, and I don't want to give you too much time to think on this. So I'm going to give you like literally 30 seconds. So just scan your list. 30 seconds starts now. Okay. 3, 2, 1. All right, so now that you have your top 4, promise we're getting close to the end. So what I'd like you to do, I'll give you more time for this, is you're going to pick your top 2 values. And what you'll do is almost create kind of umbrellas. So let's say that you value quality. You may also value work, experience, relationships, family, things like that. So you'll use that umbrella to form 2 sentences. So again, using that example of quality, your sentence could be, I value the quality of my work, the quality of my experiences, and the quality of my relationships with friends and family, quality time, however that might be. So you're going to try and put your 2 top values into sentences, including the words that are within, your top 4, top 10, whatever you'd like to do. It's open to your interpretation. So the goal here again is to have a sentence for each of your top values that kind of encompass why they are your top 2. And I'll give, let's say, 4 minutes for this. If we need more time, we'll add it. 2 minutes. And again, if we need more time, we can take more time. So don't feel too rushed. Just under 30 seconds to wrap up your sentences, or if you need more time, just pop it in the chat. Let me know. Okay, so that is my 4-minute timer. Does anyone need more time to get their list done? If I don't see anything in the chat, I will assume that you are all good to go. Okay, so now that you have your sentences, I'd like you to bring back the daily schedule that you jotted down at the start and compare those sentences with your schedule. You know, do you see your values reflected in that daily routine? Do you see them built into your life in the way that you want them to be or hope for them to be? You know, if you're not seeing time for your values, where do you see that you can make time? Because we never find time. It's not necessarily a bonus. We have to make time for things that we feel are important to us. So it's okay if you don't see an hour for kindness, but where are areas that you could sprinkle it in more and weave that into your schedule? So that's just kind of a self-reflection tool to use with this activity. But my main question really is anyone willing to share their sentences? I will share mine. I will voluntold my mother to share hers, to just get the ball rolling. But I would love to hear from everyone. Mom, do you want me to go first, or?
Sure, go ahead. And I just wanted to let everybody know, we did decide to record the session. So if you don't feel comfortable sharing, knowing that we will share the recording, just keep that in mind and no pressure to share.
Okay, so my 2 top values were kindness and community. Normally my 4 kind of fluctuate depending on the day and just kind of what is more on my mind or what I've been thinking about more. So today it was kindness and community, and under the kindness umbrella there was love, inclusion, joy, and gratitude. And community had family, friendship, making a difference, also inclusion, and well-being. So my sentences were Kindness is my anchor value. It stabilizes me and reminds me of how I want to exist in the world. Kindness is not only kindness, but also love, joy, inclusion, and gratitude. And then community is the value that keeps me connected and reminds me of my purpose. I always feel grounded and like the best version of myself when I am with family and friends doing work that I feel or know makes a difference. Including others to share that feeling with them, make people feel like they have a place, and then just being considerate of the overall well-being of the community that I live in, work in, teach in, kind of everything in general. So that was mine. Mom, I know Tamara posted a sentence in the chat. It says, community, I value being creative and working in collaboration to make a positive difference in my community. I love that one. That was a really good one. Thank you for sharing that, Tamara.
I'll just share one of mine. I kind of struggled today a little bit with like putting things together in a sentence, but the one that I have, I want to make a difference by serving I kept saying bye. I want to make a difference by serving my community by being a reliable, trustworthy volunteer. One of my big values is being reliable, a reliable person, and someone that people can trust.
What was under your umbrella for those?
Well, I think my main umbrella was make a difference, and then I had community under there, and reliable and trust. Reliability and trust.
Nice.
So if anyone else would like to share, yeah, please feel free to unmute yourself. You don't have to share your camera if you'd rather not. And a couple others are being shared in the chat, so thank you.
Yeah, Amanda, for me, perseverance is huge. Persevering is something that everyone does in this world, and it takes so much strength and is inspiring as people overcome barriers. Absolutely. Everyone has things that they're working to overcome. And I think sometimes we can get a little caught up in like the competition of like, oh, well, it's not as bad as that person, or I have it so much worse. But the idea is we all have perseverance. We all practice it. It's part of being a human being. And Amelia said, understanding. I value understanding those in my life, the concepts I'm confronted with, and the tasks at hand. Amelia, I think I'm going to probably steal that the next time I end up in this activity, because that's a really good one. That's a really good one. I definitely value that as well. Thank you for putting that so eloquently. Those are awesome. Thank you for sharing.
And while we're waiting for maybe someone else who might be willing to share, Katie, could you talk for a minute about if somebody wanted to use this, what do they need to think about if they're going to do it with their staff or as a staff activity?
Yeah. So I think it kind of depends on the environment. And you can just set the scope. So if it was work related, and that is part of the Dare to Lead activity, actually, is that it's more work focused, because again, it's like a professional development leadership book. So you can say, that we kind of talked about values in general today, but you can say like, what are your values at work, and go through the exercise in the same way, or have people identify, their top 5 and share them with everyone. You can really learn a lot about the people you're working with based on their values or how they interpret that list. If you're in an environment that is a little bit more, I don't want to say casual, but kind of like comfortable, maybe you have a smaller staff and you're all very familiar with one another, it could be good to open it up to kind of general values or personal and work values to kind of see like what the balance is. And you can start with 20 and go to 10, 4, and 2. new sentences. I've done it, yeah, where it's just kind of a general discussion of why were these your top things, or like what were your two umbrellas, so your main values and then what fell underneath them. There's another thing I was just thinking of, but I lost my train of thought. So I'll circle back to it.
Okay. Well, we'll just,
And then if you want to unblur me,
okay,
I'll share mine. Come on
all
over
right,
into
let me do
camera
that.
range.
Mhm.
Give me a little drink. Hello to those who know me, Wolfie here. Great job, Katie. This is fascinating. Obviously, one of the things I don't value is following directions, because I did this a little differently. One thing I noticed was that when you had to narrow it down, that this could mean this or it could mean that a lot of them were very close. So when I got down to the end, I had balance, family, nature, and spirituality. I did way more personal than work related. And some of the sentences I came up with were, I value a balance of family connection. And when I say family, I kind of look at everyone as a brother or sister. And that nature and love are components of my spirituality. And humor, optimism, and adaptability enhance my understanding, compassion, and gratitude. So
I love that. I love that so much. So Wolfie. For those of you that know Wolfie, that is so Wolfie. That list. Yes.
you know me a long time.
Oh, I remembered the thought that I forgot earlier. So another way that I use this with my students is I have them use these sentences, or at least these values, as a way to develop their own personal mission statement. So I encourage them to, because of the population I teach and the things that we're talking about, to think not about job titles, but rather what type of things they would like to do or how they would like to live their lives. Because I have some students that are pretty set on their path, but they haven't necessarily explored. So if they want to be a nurse, it's really easy for them to sit down and say, like, my personal mission is to become a nurse. But when you kind of push them to be a little bit more creative and like, my personal mission is to help people, I want to improve the quality of lives, that opens up a lot of different realms. There's a lot of different ways to help people, a lot of different ways to improve quality of life, not just from a healthcare standpoint. But I also like to have the personal mission statements just kind of be something that you can keep on your desk. I keep a couple of my students on my desk that I just really liked, that kind of remind me of that community, feeling like I'm making a difference. And the days when work isn't necessarily the most fun, or it's really busy and have a lot of meetings back to back, I like to look at the missions and just kind of be like, yeah, that's the greater purpose here. Like, that's kind of what we're working towards. So you can also use it, as that for yourself, or maybe for your staff to come up with you have your mission statement as an organization, but maybe just a staff mission statement of like the type of culture you want to create together, or things that you hold of importance, kind of like a list of like, these are our staff values, this is how we like to treat each other, that type of thing.
Thanks, Katie.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, we'll just doing one more round of checking in to see if anybody has anything else that they'd like to share, or if they have any questions about the activity for Katie before we sign off. Thanks again for taking time out of your day to join us, and keep your eyes peeled for our next installment, for what will be coming in August.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you for the sharing and the wonderful comments, Lynn. I'm glad you found it interesting and seeing what resonated. And again, I encourage you, it changes each day, to try it like a week from now, or even for tomorrow. It is interesting to see kind of how your answers change. I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, that's a half an hour of your time you'll never get back, but I so enjoyed being with you. And yeah, I
Katie,
guess I'll hang out in case you have questions. We can end the recording and then people can just kind of linger, or we can just, shut it down.